I'm Doug Tooke from Monarch Catholic Ministries, and this is the first in a multiple video series of free youth ministry webinars that we're going to provide online. I chose the topic of burnout to start with because I just feel like it's something that has absolutely plagued so many great youth ministers and lay ministers in the field. At the heart and soul of what we do is service, but when we let that service overwhelm us and overtake us, and it starts to deteriorate who we are as people, we are victims of sometimes our own lack of professional care and professional concern. So what we're going to do is just kind of a brief look into this training. This is a training and service that I've given across the country. Usually takes about half a day, so you have lots of good discussion. I just want to shoot through some of the imagery to make sure that we're kind of covering the basics of what we want to talk about. And I want to start out with this. Listen, read along, or just listen to this incredible statement. I picked up a fork and I explained that as long as I used it for eating, the fork would last indefinitely. However, if I began to use it to drive nails or to dig trenches, it would soon break. The key was to use it for what it was designed to do. How many of us in our ministry are doing what we weren't designed to do? We put on the hat of youth minister, or we put on the hat of lay ecclesial minister, and we get asked to do multiple things. Now, I know this is not always the fault of the minister, but it is certainly on our shoulders to articulate our skill set and to abide by what hopefully we have in our hands as some kind of a job description. When we get forced into a situation where we're doing what we maybe weren't ever designed or equipped to do, we're kind of at fault for not limiting the ministry that we try to provide. And that tends to lead itself towards this thing called burnout, where we keep working at something that we're kind of fried on and that we don't particularly want to be a part of. Here's what we're going to accomplish. We're going to look at pastor and minister burnout. We're going to look at parent burnout and just kind of a couple of things to do about it. I want to start out with some of this data that we found. New York Times produced an article back in 2010 that was picked up by this fantastic website called pastorburnout.com. And I want to use this as more of a secular resource because a lot of the data that studies lay ministers in the Catholic Church isn't necessarily exhaustive in the terms that it uses to describe the workload. We have different words and different descriptions for all the different things that we do in our parish lives. When we survey people that work in parishes, they're not necessarily associating the job description with what the actual task is. In a non-denominational church world, we call each other youth pastors. It's not that big of a deal. And we kind of associate the workload with what a youth pastor does. So I like to use this data because I actually think it's more accurate based on the workload and the actual details that we're trying to accomplish in our Catholic faith. But look at some of these numbers. 70% of youth pastors or pastors do not have any close friends. And I can tell you, from someone who's been in youth ministry for 20 years, there are far too many youth ministers who are traditionally somewhat overweight and who call the youth they work with their friends, their circle of friends. In fact, their social life really is the youth that they work with. Friends, that's not okay. That's not okay. When we're an adult and we work in a ministry as an adult, our job is to be the adult in the ministry when we're serving young people. Friends, I'm telling you, that's not indicative of good, hearty time commitment. That's indicative of your limiting your social fuel that's going to get you through the job for a longer career, a more fruitful career, I might add as well. 90% work more than 50 hours a week. I think most ministers can nod their head at that and say, yeah, guilty of that. 80% have insufficient time with their spouse and or family. Those of you that are married, and especially married with kids, you're sacrificing part of your own vocation for what another piece in your life you're calling your vocation. Friends, you got to kind of decide what the priorities are. These statistics are incredible, and they're indicative of Catholic youth ministers all across the country. Let's look at parents for just a moment. I'm a parent of 5 children, married for over 15 years. 88% said they suffer from at least one stress-related health problem. 81% worry that they will burn out. In other words, they're putting a stopgap on the work that we're doing. We're thinking ahead going, man, I'm going to fry on this because it's just too much. And we know that, and we're still doing it. 43% struggle with depression. I'm not talking about just being sad. I'm talking about clinical depression. Those things that go diagnosed and undiagnosed. couple of symptoms, and I know that you're going to find pieces of yourself in this portion of this in-service. Anger at those who make demands, cynicism, negativity, and irritability. I've never been in a situation with multiple youth ministers where they don't get together and complain really well. I'm not saying it's a bad thing necessarily to complain, but when it's so indicative of the work, I think sometimes we sell ourselves short by complaining all the time. Other symptoms and weight loss, gain, shortness of breath. But I love this first one to break open and talk about. A sense of being besieged. A sense of being attacked all the time about what we're doing and how we're doing it, whether it's from mom and dad, whether it's from parents of the youth that we work with, whether it's from the pastors, the DREs, the secretaries of the parishes that we work at. We have this sense of being attacked. Friends, those are not just symptoms of burnout. Those are symptoms of broken communication channels within the good work that we're trying to do. But all of them can lead to that thing we call burnout when we want to just depart from the workplace because we no longer can keep that fire alive. Why? Why is this so indicative of good ministry? We could break that open for hours and hours, but let's talk about 6 different things we can do to avoid burnout. 1, I know this sounds stupid. Don't do stuff. Don't say yes to every single thing that is the whim of anyone who wants to contribute to the good ministry that you're doing. Say no. Gosh, it is a great idea that we have that Halloween dance, but I just don't really feel like that's going to serve our ministry. Gosh, I do think we should do a canned food drive, but we also do these other justice and service projects, and there's just a limit to how much we can do because we're about quality here and not necessarily quantity. The ability to actually step back, assess the value and the vision, we'll talk about in a minute, of your ministry and dissect those things that really just tear you down and don't fuel the good work that you're trying to accomplish. There is stuff you don't need to do. Do you articulate it? Do you cut it out of your workload? Do you have communication channels with your pastor where you can say, these things don't feed our ministry. I'd like to focus on these things instead. Talk about stuff. Talk about it. Talk about the different things that maybe don't go well for you. Talk about the stuff that does go well. What's giving you life? Are you communicating that with a circle of friends or a community? Are you communicating it clearly with your coworkers, the staff, or your pastor? It is so important to have walls, people that you can bounce these ideas off of, that you can be sure to be checking yourself in the quality and the quantity of what you're doing. When we keep it all inside of ourselves, especially when we bury it into ourselves and we don't communicate about the hardship of our work, it will always only be hardship that goes undiagnosed, which lends itself towards us removing ourselves from the ministry and burning out. And this one, know the vision, might actually be the most important. I'm kind of a Harry Potter fan, and I love that his Dumbledore army knew exactly what the vision for his quest was. They knew what he needed and wanted to do. They knew what the purpose was. When your team, when all the people around you in ministry know what the vision for your ministry is, we are here to serve young disciples and to build them up in the kingdom of heaven. We are here to teach the faith to young adolescents. We are here to visit the imprisoned. When you have a clear vision of what you want to accomplish in your ministry, it is so much easier to push aside the things that take you away from that vision. Name the goals specifically in your ministry. And then those that you surround yourself with in that good work, when they know your vision, they'll work with you on those goals, which allows you to give responsibilities away. One of the things we do in church that's horrible is that we delegate way before we empower. What's the difference? Empower is literally that. I want to give power to you to do something. I'm going to empower you to help lead this aspect of this ministry. And then as I see you doing it well and I'm walking with you, then I'm going to give you the responsibility. I'm going to delegate it to you specifically. That is what it means to share in the ministry. When you try to do it all by yourself, when you don't empower, when you don't delegate, or when you delegate before you empower, well, here's the book, go teach 6th grade, good luck. And then it fails, and then it reflects on your unprofessionalism, how it failed, and then you become stressed about it, you're going to burn out quicker. Responsibilities come from healthy empowerment and then delegation. And we have to take it upon ourselves to be good at that. And if we're younger in ministry, it's even harder to listen to and to talk to adults that want to help us by being mature enough to say, gosh, you really are good at listening in this small group. I just want to really empower you to take over this aspect of this middle school ministry. And then let's see how it goes 6 months later, and then give it to them when it's going well, or withhold it when it's not. Remember, the point is for the successful vision, along the way becomes successful responsibility and delegation. All right? Don't work after work. Have a line. Draw the line. Now, youth ministers especially, we're terrible about this because we're just sunk in social media. And I'm guilty of this too, where I don't draw the line. I don't eliminate work from my home. Remember, I have kids, I have a wife, and they are my primary vocation. And that is where my heart and my service needs to be. Don't equate your time in the office with parish as your spiritual life. There has to be a separation. When we're home, let's let home be the primary focus. Now, sometimes our families and our loved ones share in those ministries, and there's a lot of beauty and value that can come from that. But don't sit there on your phone or on your laptop all the time while your kids are nagging on you to go outside to do X, Y, and Z. Removing yourself from the constant immersion in your ministry allows you to see your ministry in a different light, allows you to be a more successful minister. And finally, and I'm not sure there is a more important one than this, how are you doing with the Lord? How are you doing with the Lord? And how much time are you dedicating to Him? Stop saying, well, I pray when I'm at work, unless you literally remove yourself from the work environment and steep yourself in Christ. Don't pretend like your spiritual life is when you're stacking chairs and flipping tables and getting tacos ready for the youth. Your spiritual life is your spiritual life. When you get out of your own way and you invite the Spirit to come and to bless your time, get in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Commit yourself to good silence. What are your routines? How are you journaling? What are you reading that's helping you grow as a minister? You can't give what you don't have. You can't do it. You can't evangelize without a prayer life. So ask yourself those hearty questions. When am I spending time just with the Lord? In the commute, listening to the podcast or engaging the app. In the shower, listening to X, Y, and Z. The silent 10 minutes that I find before my kids wake up or right after they go to bed. What are you doing to specifically be nurtured in your personal spirituality? And I guarantee you, your lens for your ministry will expand. You will have more breadth and depth to what you accomplish, and burnout will become a thing of the past. Let the Lord worry about the length of your ministry. You worry about the now and what He has in store for you. I've got 5 kids. This is my vocation. Father Mark Linneman, a good friend of mine, has a great line. He says, don't take a vacation from your vocation. And I think that might be the best advice that we could give anyone in the lay ecclesial ministry world. Know who your focal point is and work from there. Remember, ministry is supposed to be what overflows from your cup, not you dumping yourself out and being empty all the time and stressed and disgusted with yourself. It's what overflows from your good work. And I think you're going to find that you're in a much healthier place. Create social environments where you can share and listen. Find time with the Lord. Don't bring it home. Make sure you are committed to the vision of the ministry that you want to promulgate. Thanks for tuning in.